Congratulations for your speech. It was very interesting. And I would like to know your thoughts related to the way the state collect taxes. Because when we address this tax issue, there are three things, and three different things that somehow are mingled together. The first point is how much the state charges the population with taxes. I would not like to address this issue, at least not now. The second one would be what does the state does with the tax that are collected. I would not like to address this issue now, but then I will come to the third point, which has to do with bureaucracy and the way the taxes are collected, and the fact that entrepreneurs and businessmen, they are always liable to be fined, and the reasons are very different, because it can be delay, it can be mistakes, it can be even disagreements, and such disagreements are legitimate. And also because when the laws are so complicated, you can have different opinions and interpretations. And in this sense, even the tax officers, they may give advices which are not really reliable and different between them. So I would like to ask you if in the United States and your experience throughout the world, how this issue related to bureaucracy and the way the tax are collected worldwide. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting speech, and your ideas were very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you know, I think initially taxes were collected to build infrastructure as a sort of a collective toll for society, and then it grew, and we had to fund wars also, you know, and then we had to help the poor, which I think is a worthy goal. But the United States tax system is also, it's incredibly complex. Oftentimes the rich don't pay, or corporations don't pay taxes because they find ways out of it. I don't think corporations should pay any taxes because every corporate tax is a consumer tax in the end. I would rather, I think, I'm not sure how you tax in Brazil, but we have, actually I am sure, actually someone was telling me that it's very high taxes actually and local and all of that. But I like the idea of sales taxes. I don't like the idea of income taxes or corporate taxes or capital gains tax. Actually, I am an anarchist. No. But when you punish people for creating wealth or you incentivize them to earn less in a way, I think it's a big problem. I'll give you an example. In the United States is a problem, in my opinion. There's progressive taxation, so the rich pay a higher percentage after, you know, as they got richer. And the poor pay less. So it's gotten to the point where 48% of American workers don't pay any income tax at all. The top 10% pay 90% of the income tax, so they fund the federal government. Now, I don't feel bad for rich people until I am rich myself, but the problem is that they're not invested in the country in the same way. If I don't pay taxes, I'm always going to vote for higher taxes. What do I care? I'm not affected by it. But the people who do pay taxes have to deal with a very complex bureaucracy that costs billions of dollars every year to find accountants, to do all those things. So I think, and I've advocated for this in columns, but is to simplify the tax code would be great in helping prosperity in the United States. Just to simplify it. I would like a flat tax. I think it's the best idea. I also like the idea of a consumption tax. You only pay for what you buy, not what you earn, because you want people saving, you want them reinvesting in things. You don't want to punish them. If you make money in the stock market, they tax you on your income, then they tax you on the money you made in the stock market. They tax you twice on the same dollar. I think that's a bad idea. I'm not an expert worldwide on taxes. Unfortunately, I know the tax system in the United States, which also is very complicated because there's city taxes and other taxes as well. Plus, there's taxes for retirement, you know, your medical retirement, Medicare, and Social Security, which is the worst retirement fund on earth. I think your return is 1% or something like that if you're lucky. It's also not fair that you give that money and you save that money, but if you die young, you can't give it to your kids. You know, it's not your money. It's just a fund that transfers money back to you for a while. So I think those things are unfair. And my last point is, now the tax system is used in the nanny state, right? If they say that soda's bad for you, they tax it more. If they say cigarettes aren't good, they tax it more. They punish you for doing certain things. They punish oil companies, but they give breaks to solar panel companies. I'm not against solar panels. I think they're very nice, but I think that everyone should pay an equal amount. Taxation is not a moral policy. It's an economic policy for social structure, not something that should be used like it's as some moral axe or bludgeon. So I guess that's my answer. I hope I answered it for you.
I would ask you about the question of smoking. Don't you think it's right to protect the rights of non-smokers, including, for instance, waiters, pregnant women, children, and so on and so forth? So in this way, the state with legislation would protect non-smokers of the bad effects of passive smoking. Another remark regarding blitzen in traffic. After the state government here in Rio began to check drivers drinking too much, the number of accidents and victims of these accidents were 20 to 30% below average before the introduction of this. So two questions: the question of smoking and blitzen to check drunken drivers. Thank you.
So the first question was protecting the non-smoker from the secondhand smoke, things like that, I think. Well, I think they're protected by the choices they make. No one is forcing you to be next to a smoker. I mean, you can walk away, you can tell them to stop smoking. In private property, I don't think that you have a right to go into someone's restaurant if they have the right to make the policy, and you have the right to make a choice if you're there or not. I can't speak to what happened in Rio with drinking and driving, but in the United States, a lot of people perish because of drunk driving accidents, and there's been almost no change because of policy. The line is less people die because the roads are safer and the cars are made safer. But I haven't seen a study that says that laws have made a difference. Even the police admitted to me when I worked on a long story about drunk driving that the reason they set up roadblocks was to scare people, in the future, not because they hoped to find people who are driving drunk. So I'm not sure, but I do want to protect people. Driving drunk, I think the penalty for driving drunk and then hurting someone should be stiffer in the United States than it is now. But I don't think that we should be infringing on the rights of people who aren't drinking and driving with roadblocks and things of arbitrary things like that.
Eu começava a dizer que é muito interessante, pois os Estados Unidos, onde para nós, aqui no Brasil, é o perfeito exemplo do Estado liberal e das liberdades individuais e consagradas. Também o Estado Babá avançou. Nós aqui, que sempre fomos considerados jovens, juvenis, do ponto de vista do governo e das instituições e organizações, pelo visto, logo temos muito mais leis do que vocês lá nos Estados Unidos. Isso, a propósito, vem a pergunta do José Carvalho, que diz que você, no início da sua palestra, afirmou que democracia é a principal causa do Estado Babá. E ele gostaria de saber por quê, que solução sugere para a implementação de um processo para decisões de natureza coletiva em uma sociedade. Eu imagino que seja interessante saber, quando uma maioria quer alguma coisa em detrimento de um interesse de uma minoria, essa minoria vai ter de engolir, vai ter de suportar esse processo. E como é que se defende o interesse da minoria?
That's a very good question. Now, I forgot who said it, but democracy is very important and a good idea. or I should say, it's a bad idea, but the best idea we have, right? For self-determination, it's just how it is, and it's the way to do it. But I say this because I think America has evolved, I would say, to a point where there were many of the big problems had been dissipated away, so that politicians started worrying about all the little problems, and because they have to justify their job, they can't just sit around and say everything's okay, you know, and they have to do something, and this is what they've been doing. The way to deal with this is to diffuse democracy. The founders of the United States, in the Federalist Papers and in the Constitution, created federalism, so that the person in Virginia couldn't tell the person in New York how to live their life. You locally decide, and if you don't like what's going on locally, you go to another place and live there. I live in the state of Colorado. There's a place called Boulder. It's the most liberal, and by liberal I mean leftist, place in the country. And there's also a city called Colorado Springs. It's one of the most conservative places in the country, and they each have their own town government, and they each make their own decisions. So the best way to do it is federalism. In the United States, we have states with something called an electoral college, so that the big states don't tell the little states how to live. So California and New York don't control the whole country. I think that's the best way to do it. That's why I'm against direct democracy on a federal level, other than the president. That's why you have congressmen and senators in the United States and elsewhere, and I think that that's the best idea. It's not the perfect idea, but it's a good one. My point of bringing up democracy was simply to say that many people interchange the word freedom and democracy as if they were the same thing, but they're not. You know, you can have an autocratic ruler who is excellent. I know it sounds terrible, but maybe they're very enlightened and they give everyone excellent lives. And you can have a democracy where the majority persecutes the minority. It can happen. I'm not saying that the minority is being persecuted in the United States, only that as far as the nanny state goes, it's been democracy that has brought that about, not some kind of, you know, ruler or military dictatorship or what have you.
Uma pergunta interessante aqui, gosto de estar falando, complementa a reflexão, que é do Paulo César. O processo de infantilização dos cidadãos pode distorcer o regime democrático? É um meio também de favorecer grupos de interesses, ou seja, diante desse processo de segurança que grupos da sociedade querem, outros grupos de interesse não pegam carona nessas ideias para com uma agenda secreta, o que aparentemente é pela segurança, na verdade por um interesse econômico ou religioso ou moral ou da crença de um grupo qualquer?
Yeah, I think that's the problem, is that the nannyist idea in the United States comes from the puritanical right, you know, the evangelical right, and the social engineering left. So it's very difficult sometimes to even know where it's coming from, and sometimes they join forces, you know. So it's difficult. People often ask me, what can you do about it? How can you? If I knew, I would be richer and smarter. But I think the Tea Party movement in the United States was a reaction to this kind of thing. And I've said this, you know, I don't like populist movements because they're anti-intellectual, I think, on some level. But I did like the core idea of it, that people should be free, and it was sort of a return to the founding idea. And I think that it starts with kids, and you have to educate your children, and I educate my children, and about collective thought and marching in line with everyone else. So we're not headed in the right direction, that's all I can say. And I'm not sure that we can stop it, simply because these things grow on top of each other. Precedent means precedent, and it continues.